In 1943, the boy believed trains were harmless. Steel wheels, timetables, whistles in the distance. To him, the railway meant order in a world that was slowly falling apart. He was 16, too young to fight, too old to be protected, so they gave him a job, a small job, a big trust. Every morning before sunrise, he walked to the rail yard with a lantern in one hand and bread in the other. His job was simple: signal incoming trains, guide them safely through the junction, keep traffic moving, no weapons, no politics, no decisions, just signals. Green meant go, red meant stop. The boy liked that. Clear rules made the world feel safe again. The day felt normal. That afternoon, the sky was clear. Too clear. The station was quiet except for the distant rumble of engines. The boy stood by the signal post, boots dusty, uniform hanging loose on his thin frame. He had done this 100 times. Then he heard planes, high above, not loud yet, not close. He looked up, shielding his eyes. They were far away, tiny shapes against the sky. He didn't know what they were looking for. A mistake begins. Moments later, a train whistle echoed. A transport train was approaching the junction. Slow, heavy, important. The boy checked his instructions. He checked the track. He checked the signal. Everything looked right. The planes were still far. The train was on time. The track was clear. So he raised the lantern. Green. He didn't know. He didn't know that the planes were watching rail lines. He didn't know trains were targets. He didn't know his signal could be seen from the air. To him, it was just light in darkness, just duty, just routine. The train rolled forward, and above the clouds, someone adjusted their course. The calm before everything changed. The boy stepped back, satisfied. Another job done. Another train guided safely. He had no idea that in that exact moment, history had already chosen him. Not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a boy whose small action would change an entire town. And soon, he would learn that guilt is heavier than any bomb. The sound came before the fire, a low, distant hum. Steady, patient, mechanical. The boy heard it and looked up. The planes were closer now. The sky changed its mind. At first, he thought nothing of it. Planes passed over the city all the time. Sometimes they bombed somewhere else. Sometimes they didn't bomb at all. But this time they slowed. They turned. They followed the tracks. The boy felt a strange tightening in his chest. Why were they lining up like that? The first bomb. The whistle of the falling bomb cut through the air like a scream. The ground shook. The train screeched to a halt, metal screaming against metal. People jumped from doors, fell to the ground, ran without knowing where. The boy froze. Smoke rose from the tracks. Fire followed. Realization hits. Another bomb fell. Then another. The railway yard exploded into chaos. Wood, steel, bodies, everything mixed. The boy's ears rang. His lantern fell from his hand and shattered on the ground. That's when it hit him. They were bombing the train, and they had found it, because of his signal. Running through fire, he ran, not away, toward the station. He didn't know why. Maybe to help. Maybe to undo what he'd done. Maybe because guilt had already grabbed him by the throat. People screamed his name. People screamed at him. People screamed for anyone. The town shook as if it were being torn apart piece by piece. The moment of truth. He saw the train burning. Wagons torn open. Smoke pouring out. Men and women trapped inside. He tried to pull a door open. It wouldn't move. A man inside looked at him through the smoke. Not angry. Not accusing. Just terrified. Then another bomb fell. The boy was thrown to the ground. The weight of a signal. When the planes finally left, the town was unrecognizable. The tracks were broken. The station was gone. The train was destroyed. People lay everywhere, and the boy stood there, shaking, covered in ash. His hands were still shaped like they were holding the lantern. Green. What changed forever? No one said it was his fault. No one needed to. He knew. Because in war, even innocence can pull a trigger. And that day, without knowing it, the boy had guided death home. The morning after the bombing, the town was awake. But it was not alive. Silence with eyes. No one shouted at the boy. No one grabbed him. No one accused him. That was worse. People looked at him differently now. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With knowing. Women stopped talking when he passed. Men stared a second longer than necessary. Children were pulled away gently, quietly, as if guilt could spread by touch. Walking through ruins. The boy walked past the railway yard. What had once been order was now chaos. Twisted rails, burned wagons, ash everywhere. He saw a shoe near the tracks. Just one. He stared at it for a long time. Then he threw up. The job was gone. No one officially fired him. They just didn't call him back. The signal post stood empty. The lanterns were gone. The timetable board was shattered. His job had vanished, along with the illusion that small roles meant small consequences. At 16, he had learned something men twice his age never did. War does not care who pulls the lever. Nighttime punishment. At night, sleep refused him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the signal. Green. Every sound became a whistle. Every shadow became falling metal. Every silence became judgment. He started sleeping sitting up. If he slept lying down, he dreamed of the train. And in those dreams, it never stopped. Whispers without words. The boy heard things without hearing them. He felt blame in the way doors closed. He felt weight in the way conversations shifted. He felt judgment in silence. No one needed to say, "You did this," because he said it to himself every minute. A child no longer. He stopped being 16, not officially, but inside. Inside, he became old. He stopped eating much, stopped talking, stopped looking up at the sky. Planes passed overhead again. This time, he didn't look. The truth, no one spoke. The town blamed the war. The officials blamed the enemy. The records blamed strategy. But the boy blamed his hands, because he remembered how easy it felt, how routine, how harmless. Just a signal, just light, just duty. And now, just death. What disappeared? This chapter. In this chapter, nothing exploded. No bombs, no fire, no sirens, but something vital vanished. The boy's innocence. Because once you understand that your smallest action can destroy lives, you never feel small again. The bombs were gone, but the noise stayed. A sound only he heard. The town rebuilt itself in small ways. People cleared rubble. Shops reopened with broken windows. Life pretended to move forward. But for the boy, the bombing never ended. He heard it everywhere. In the slam of a door, in a dropped pan, in the wind passing through broken walls. Every sound carried the same message. You did this. Guilt has a voice. It spoke to him when he woke up. It followed him through the streets. It sat beside him when he tried to eat. It reminded him of details he wished he could forget. How calm his hand had been. How steady the green light looked. How proud he felt doing his job right. Guilt didn't shout. It whispered. And whispers are impossible to escape. Avoiding the tracks. He stopped going near the railway. Not because it was destroyed, but because it remembered him. Every twisted rail felt like an accusation. Every burned sleeper looked like a finger pointing at his chest. Once he tried to walk past quickly. His legs gave out. He sat down and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silently, like someone apologizing too late. People who didn't look away. Most people avoided him, but some didn't. An old woman stared at him one afternoon. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty. "My son was on that train," she said calmly. Then she walked away. She didn't need to say anything else. She had already taken something from him. Punishing himself, the boy began skipping meals, not intentionally at first, then intentionally. Hunger felt appropriate. Pain felt deserved. If others had lost family, comfort, homes, then why should he be allowed to feel full? Why should he feel warm? Why should he sleep peacefully? Guilt taught him discipline. Cruel discipline, the weight of knowing. At 16, he now understood something terrifying. You don't have to mean harm to cause it. You don't have to hate to destroy. Sometimes all it takes is obedience. That knowledge crushed him more than any explosion ever could, because it meant the enemy wasn't just planes or soldiers. It was normal people doing normal tasks. Like him. What disappeared? This chapter. Nothing visible vanished this time. The town was already broken, but something invisible disappeared completely. The boy's belief that he could ever be forgiven, because forgiveness requires someone else to blame. And he had already blamed himself. He didn't decide to stop talking. It just happened. Words felt dangerous. At first, he spoke less because he was tired. Then, because he didn't know what to say. Then, because every word felt like it might hurt someone. Laughter felt inappropriate. Questions felt intrusive. Even apologies felt useless. What do you say when the damage is already done? So he stayed quiet. Invisible in crowds. People gathered often now. Neighbors sharing news. Exchanging food. Counting who had survived. The boy sat among them. Always present. Never included. Conversations flowed around him like water around a stone. Someone would ask, "Do you remember before the bombing?" Then stop. Eyes would flick toward him, and the sentence would die. Silence as punishment. At first, the silence felt like punishment. Then it felt like protection. If he didn't speak, he couldn't say the wrong thing. If he didn't speak, no one could accuse him. If he didn't speak, he could pretend he wasn't there. He learned how to disappear without leaving the room. The mirror problem. One evening, he caught his reflection in a broken mirror. He didn't recognize the face. Thinner, older, eyes that didn't belong to a 16-year-old. He touched his mouth, as if checking whether words were still there. They were. He just didn't trust them anymore. People spoke about him. He heard things. Not insults. Worse. Pity. Such a shame. He was just a boy. He didn't know. Those sentences crushed him more than anger ever could, because they tried to remove responsibility, and responsibility was the only thing he still owned. Silence becomes identity. Weeks passed, then months. People stopped expecting him to talk. They stopped asking questions. They stopped noticing when he entered a room. Silence became his role. Other boys became soldiers. Some became workers. Some became rebels. He became the quiet one. The boy everyone stepped around. Nights without dreams. Even his dreams went silent. No explosions. No screams. Just empty spaces. Rooms without people. Stations without trains. Signals without light. He would wake up feeling like he had already disappeared. What disappeared? This chapter. In this chapter, no buildings fell, no bombs dropped, but something essential faded completely. His voice, not physically, but emotionally. Because once silence becomes safer than speech, you stop believing your story deserves to be heard. Time didn't heal the town, it sharpened it. Grief turns direction. At first, everyone blamed the war, then the enemy, then fate. But grief doesn't like abstract things for long. It wants a face, a shape, someone it can look at and say, "This is why." Slowly, without anyone deciding it out loud, the town chose the boy. Conversations that changed. He heard his name more often now. Not loudly, not publicly, in half sentences, in pauses, in looks exchanged across rooms. Someone signaled that train. He was on duty that day. It was a mistake, but still, mistake. The word followed him like a shadow, a question without an answer. One afternoon, a group of men stopped him near the market. Not angry, not violent, just serious. "Why did you signal?" one asked. The boy opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Because what answer could fix this?" "I was told to. I didn't know. I was just doing my job." None of those sentences brought the dead back. So he stayed silent, and silence looked like guilt. From pity to distance, people stopped defending him. At first, they said, "He's just a boy." Later, they said nothing at all. Doors closed a little faster. Greetings became shorter. Help disappeared. He felt it immediately. Food portions smaller. Work offers gone. Invitations never coming. The town wasn't punishing him. It was removing him, becoming the warning. Parents pulled children away when he passed, not because he was dangerous, but because he was a lesson. "Be careful," their eyes said. "Small actions matter. Look what happens." The boy understood. He had become a living reminder of consequence. Night thoughts. At night, he asked himself questions no one else dared to ask him. If I hadn't gone to work that day, if I had questioned the order, if I had hesitated 1 second longer, every version ended the same way. Someone else would have held the lantern. The bombers would still come. But logic doesn't soften guilt. It only argues with it. And guilt always wins. What disappeared? This chapter. In this chapter, the town didn't lose buildings. It lost unity. Because when pain has no clear enemy, communities fracture. And when they fracture, someone is pushed outside. That someone was him. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving. Some exits don't need witnesses. Packing a life in minutes. The boy packed light, not because he didn't own much, but because memories were too heavy. A shirt, a piece of bread, his papers. He left the lantern behind. He couldn't carry that anymore. Walking away from the town. At dawn, the town looked almost peaceful. Smoke rose gently. Birds dared to return. Streets were empty. For a moment it felt like forgiveness. He walked past familiar corners for the last time. The broken station, the silent market, the street where people stopped greeting him. No one watched him leave. That hurt more than being stopped. The tracks still followed him. He chose the road away from the railway. Still, the tracks appeared again, bent, damaged, leading nowhere. It felt intentional, as if the world itself refused to let him forget. Every step away from the town felt lighter. Every step away from the tracks felt impossible. Hope, briefly. By noon, he reached open land. Fields untouched by bombs. Air that didn't smell like ash. He sat down and ate the bread slowly. For the first time in months, he imagined a future. A different town. A different name. A life where no one knew about the signal. For the first time, guilt loosened its grip. Just a little. Reality catches up. Footsteps. Voices. 2 soldiers approached from the road. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They asked calmly, "Where are you going, boy?" He hesitated. That was enough. They checked his papers. They recognized the town's stamp. Recognition passed between them. "You don't leave war. You can't travel alone," one said. Too dangerous. They didn't accuse him. They didn't arrest him. They turned him around, back toward the town, back toward the tracks, back toward the life he tried to escape. The boy didn't resist. Resistance requires belief, and he had lost that long ago, walking back. The walk back felt longer. He noticed details he hadn't before. Broken fences, scorched trees, abandoned shoes in the dirt. The world looked like it understood him now. Damaged, moving, but never really going anywhere. The truth he learned. That night, back in the town, the boy lay awake. He understood something clearly for the first time. You can leave places, you can leave people, but you cannot outrun what you carry. And he carried that signal everywhere. What disappeared? This chapter. This chapter didn't take his life. It took something else, the belief that distance could save him. Because some mistakes don't stay behind. They walk beside you. After trying to leave, the boy stopped trying anything. No more questions. He didn't ask why anymore. Why him? Why that day? Why that signal? Questions had sharp edges. Acceptance was dull, but safe. He learned to carry the weight without shifting it, moving like a ghost. He walked through the town every day, not hiding, not announcing himself, just present. People no longer reacted strongly. They had adjusted. Grief doesn't burn forever. Eventually, it cools into something harder. The boy felt it in the way people looked through him now. He was no longer a scandal. He was a reminder people had learned to live around. The shape of guilt. Guilt changed shape. It stopped screaming, stopped accusing. It became routine, like hunger, like cold, like war itself. He woke up with it. He worked with it. He sat with it in the evenings. It no longer surprised him. That scared him more than the bombs ever did. Work without meaning. He found small jobs, clearing rubble, carrying supplies, fixing what could still be fixed. No one trusted him with signals anymore. That was fine. He didn't trust himself either. Each task was simple. Each task was safe. Each task kept his hands busy. Busy hands didn't remember the lantern, watching others live. He watched other boys laugh. Not often, but sometimes. He didn't envy them. He felt distant from them, like watching a life he used to belong to. He understood now. Some people survive war with scars. Some survive with stories. He survived with responsibility. And responsibility doesn't fade. A quiet realization. One evening, he sat near the broken station. The tracks were still damaged. Trains still passed occasionally, slower, cautious. He realized something then. If he had known, if he had hesitated, if he had refused, the war would still have found a way. This didn't absolve him, but it explained something important. He was not the cause. He was part of the mechanism, and mechanisms don't choose. They operate, choosing to stay. He didn't forgive himself. He didn't seek forgiveness. He chose something else, to stay, to live, to work, to carry the weight without dropping it on anyone else. If his life had to be heavier than others, then he would carry it quietly. What disappeared? This chapter. In this chapter, nothing dramatic ended. No death, no escape, no explosion. But something finally faded. The boy's fight against guilt. Because fighting it only made it louder. Acceptance made it bearable. Years passed. The war moved into history books. The town moved into rebuilding. Life learned new routines. But the signal never left him. Time moves forward. People do too. Buildings rose where rubble once lay. Tracks were repaired. New trains arrived. Quieter, slower, cautious. Children were born who didn't remember sirens. Men returned who no longer wore uniforms. Shops reopened with fresh paint and forced smiles. The boy grew older, not visibly at first, but inside. Time had already aged him long ago. A man with a past. People stopped calling him the boy. He became the quiet man, the reliable worker, the one who never complained. Newcomers didn't know his story. Old ones didn't talk about it. Silence became tradition. He married late. He laughed rarely. He avoided railways when he could. But sometimes at dusk, he walked near the station. The glow that never died. One evening, he stood far from the tracks. A signal light turned green, just for a moment. His chest tightened. Not panic, not fear, memory. He could still feel the weight of the lantern. Still remember how harmless it felt. Still see how easy it was to obey. Years didn't erase that. They only made it quieter. Conversations with no one. At night, he spoke to people who weren't there. Not ghosts, memories. I didn't know, he whispered. I was young. I was told. The words hung in the air, unanswered. Because forgiveness doesn't come from memory. It comes from people. And some people never returned. Watching the new generation. He watched boys work near the railway again. Young, focused, trusting rules. He wanted to stop them sometimes. Not to accuse. Not to scare. Just to say, ask questions. Pause once. Think. But he never spoke. Some lessons are too heavy to pass on. The meaning of survival. He understood something slowly, painfully. Surviving war isn't about living. It's about carrying what lived through you. Others carried wounds. Others carried loss. He carried consequence. And consequence doesn't heal. It integrates. It becomes part of who you are. What disappeared? This chapter. Time erased many things. Rubble, uniforms, noise. But it did not erase responsibility. What disappeared instead was hope that forgetting would ever come. Because some memories don't fade. They dim, and they glow, just enough to be seen in the dark. In the end, it wasn't the bombs that defined his life. It was the light, the offer. Years after the war, the railway reopened fully. One afternoon, an official approached him. "You know the system," the man said. "We could use someone like you." It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a test. It was just work. Honest work. The kind many men were grateful for. The answer he had ready. He didn't hesitate. No. The word came easily. Too easily. Because some skills never leave you, and some should never be used again. The official nodded and walked away. He didn't ask why. People rarely ask questions they don't want answers to. Standing near the tracks. That night, he walked near the station. Not onto it. Near it. Trains passed. Slower now. Controlled. Cautious. Signals changed. Red. Green. Yellow. Lights doing what lights were meant to do. Guiding. Directing. Saving time. He watched them from the shadows. The light. He refused. Once a signal malfunctioned. For a moment it stayed dark. An employee hurried toward it. The man, no longer a boy, could have helped. He knew exactly what to do, exactly where to stand, exactly how to raise the light. He stayed still, not because he was afraid, because he had already done enough. Living with the choice. Some people carry guilt by denying it. Others carry it by drowning in it. He carried it by refusing to repeat it. That was his penance. That was his discipline. He didn't need forgiveness from the world. He needed restraint from himself. The final understanding. He finally understood something that took a lifetime to learn. In war, innocence doesn't protect you. Obedience doesn't absolve you. Intent doesn't erase impact. Sometimes the smallest action creates the largest shadow. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is never raise the light again. Last image. As the last train of the night disappeared into the distance, the signal turned green. It glowed. He turned away. Not in anger, not in fear, but in acceptance. What remained? He lived. Quietly, ordinarily, responsibly. Not as a hero, not as a villain, but as a reminder that war doesn't only destroy cities. It teaches ordinary people how dangerous just doing your job can be.